welcome to Relish Books. Today I'm talking about literary criticism and what gives us as readers the right to criticize other people's work. This is a little bit different from what I've done before, but I think, I don't know, I just felt like talking about it, especially since I have talked about some great classics that I've criticized pretty harshly, and there's going to be a lot more that I'm going to do in the future. So, I remember years ago, I was pretty young. I was very, very passionate about reading. I was like on fire for books. I had that hunger. I could just like never get enough. I was just reading book after book all the time. And I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write novels. I still do, but I'm a little more realistic now. But I remember I was talking to two of my older sisters, and again, they were a lot older than me. I was very young, and in the moment, I was probably being a little bit full of it. I probably needed to be brought down a little bit, but we were talking about books and authors. I don't remember for sure what brought it up, and I don't remember for certain which author it was. I'm pretty sure it was Charles Dickens, which is funny because that's still an author that I really love. But I was saying that like no author is perfect. They all like have flaws, and I said some flaw that I thought Dickens had. I made some criticism of his work, and one of my sisters was like, "Who are you to criticize his work? Because you have no right, because you could never write something like that." And that really like brought me down a lot, and it made me feel really bad. It made me think. And at the time, I think that was actually, like I said, I think that was actually good for me. But thinking back on that, maybe at that time I didn't have the right to criticize. But thinking back on that, that's really not true. And that mindset is not true. And so I'm just going to talk about why. Why are we able to criticize work that we could never do? And the same applies to everything. My husband and I were looking at this sculpture one time that was horribly done. It was just awful. The proportions were all wrong. It was very just rough and bad. And I was complaining about it, kind of crapping on it. And he was like, "Well, could you do better?" And I was like, "No, I couldn't. I couldn't do it at all." But that's not the point. When we criticize something, we're not saying we could do better. We're saying we hold it to an objective standard and it falls short of this standard. So, the main thing that gives readers the right to criticize is that books are written by writers for readers. We are what they're for, and art is made for people's enjoyment. We are the audience that is being written for. The work is being produced for us, and their credibility hangs on whether it's considered by readers as good or not. And some authors, this doesn't really have to do with whether an author is popular or not in their time, because there may come like future generations that appreciate it when the present one didn't. That's not really the point here either. But when you think about, when you think about a writer writing a book, the reader is the one who has every right to criticize it, because that's who it's for. And also, writers, a lot of the time, while they do have the skills that a lot of us don't, a lot of the time, when they're like up close to their work, it's a lot harder for them to actually see it clearly and to tell whether it's good or bad a lot of the time. And it really does take sometimes fresh a fresh perspective. But even that aside, so it's a little more complicated than that, though, because everybody has the right to like or dislike a book. You're the audience it's written for. If you read it and you don't like it, or you do like it, that's your right. Whether it's just like a cheap trash novel, it's totally your right to like or dislike. But in order to truly criticize something, you do have to know a little bit. You do have to understand that there is objective good and bad. The same with like art, because somebody else could look at a piece of art that's horribly done, that's like objectively awful, and be like, well, it's beautiful to me. And that's their right, It is their right to like or dislike it. But they are not qualified to criticize it if they don't understand objective good and bad. So the nice thing about books and about art, the only thing you really need to have in order to be able to criticize a book is you just need to have read a lot of books. You need to have read a lot of really great books and understand what makes them great, to see the mechanics of them, and not just to be like, oh, that was a good book. Yeah, I like Charles Dickens as much as I like, James Patterson or something. And there are those people, and again, that's the right to like or dislike something. That doesn't mean they have the right to really criticize, though, because they don't understand objectives. And yeah, it drives me crazy when I hear people who are like, oh, I love books so much. I love reading. And they start telling me about all their favorite authors that I just really have no respect for. And these like mass-produced series and blah, blah, blah. And they're talking about how great it is and how wonderful the writing is. And it's just like, but that is like I said, that's 100% their right. Those people are who those books are written for. There's nothing wrong with having a like or a dislike of something, even if it's not objectively great. But to criticize a book, to say it's good or it's bad in the writing for these reasons, you do need to have some sort of foundation, and that foundation just comes through a lot of reading, a lot of study. And I think for me, it can be tempting because criticism is really fun. So you have a lot of these people who will just harshly criticize something just because it's fun to tear things down. And I understand that, and I can feel myself drawn to that sometimes. So I need to be careful. Like, obviously, I much prefer it if I love a book, but I also really enjoy it if I don't, because then I get to talk about how much I didn't like it and all the reasons. And that's really fun for whatever reason. But to just try to be objective, though, to try to be honest, I think if you have read enough, if you've read a lot, if you kind of understand what makes a book great, if you love books, if you love great writing, then you absolutely do have the right to criticize great authors. And you are, as a reader, the most qualified to criticize great authors. So that's just some thoughts that I was having today. I hope you enjoy, and let me know any of your favorite classics in the comments, and I will try to read them and tell you honestly what I think about them. So, thanks.